Yes, good afternoon, everybody. As you notice, I left my notes there because everything I prepared for myself seemed totally irrelevant. So I'm just going to share with you some thoughts. And I think some of you know me as in my previous capacity as UN Rapporteur on Violence Against Women. And having held that position for 6 years has really educated me incredibly into where we are, where we need to go, what is working, what is not working. And the discussion of the previous panel on the issue of culture, religion, is a very central issue. And I think UN Women must come to terms with the debates in this area, not that we have as academics or practitioners, but this is truly an area where major tensions are created. When I was the rapporteur, I did about 17 country visits, and in each country I went to, I would hear a similar discussion. Well, 2 of the countries that I visited were Western European countries. There, the argument was, you know, we are a rational, legal society. Our women have completed their emancipation, but we have these immigrants from very primitive cultures which we need to work on. But in the majority of other countries that I went to, which were can be considered as countries of the South in different, from different traditions and cultures and religions, I would hear the constant argument that, oh, in our culture this is not possible. One of the last countries I visited was Moldova, and we were having an interesting debate with the chief prosecutor. And I was accompanied by, we had a joint mission with the torture rapporteur. The prosecutor said, oh, the Moldovan culture, he went on, and I said, Mr. Prosecutor, with all due respect, I have heard this over and over again. This sounds more like patriarchal culture to me than Moldovan culture. Don't be so unjust to your own culture. He laughed and he resigned to the fact. I think there is this universality in this kind of a cultural discourse because of the universality of hegemony of a very masculine patriarchal culture which predominates the entire world and manifests in different forms and different shapes. So what has become the famous phrase of clash of civilizations is in fact clash of masculinities, I argue. And women are not passive standbyers, of course, in all this, but rarely do we find in the clash of such civilizations or masculinities any space for women's voices to be heard. In that sense, I think the previous panel, very eloquently, the speakers showed that women are they have religions, they have cultures, but they basically want to live free and equal life with dignity. But unfortunately, acknowledging this does not do away with the problem of power politics. Religion and culture has become a major discourse which manipulates lives, and women are often put in a position of, particularly women of the South, to choose between their rights or their culture. And I think this is a very unfair choice to be made, because women have other alternative ways of existing. And it is this voice that needs to be heard, and it is this voice that we need to be able to integrate into our own theoretical and paradigmatic frameworks, which I don't think we have done so sufficiently yet. But what I want to really point to is this, of course, I don't want to repeat the previous panel, but I think for women, UN women to go forward, there are basically 2 things that I can, drawing on my rapporteur work, that I can point to as issues that need to be of high priority. One, violence against women. which has been a very powerful entry point. I come from a development background, and the woman in development discourse was very powerful in terms of mobilizing women from all around the world, particularly third world women's issues became more visible within that context. But I think violence against women had a far more deeper penetration into everyday life than any other agenda so far, because violence against women questioned intimate lives. It penetrated into the private lives. Therefore, it questioned and raised issues regarding taken for granted realities of life. In that sense, it was very powerful. It questioned the whole notion of doctrine of state responsibility, that state is not only responsible not to do harm, but state is responsible to take positive action to prevent others, non-state actors, from doing harm. So the private sphere has really opened up to scrutiny. It has also transformed very much what we understand of human rights itself. However, with all this very powerful transformative impact, violence against women is still very much treated as an isolated, selective issue, as if it is totally different from the general status of women and women's subordination in general. Even the setup of the United Nations institutionally reflects this very well. The CSW is located in New York, which deals with policy issues regarding women's empowerment and advancement, and violence against women is in Geneva, and it deals with human rights issues, the harm done. And when I was the rapporteur, of course, I worked in DAW as well for 2.5 years during Beijing +5, and I wasn't quite aware of this fragmentation. When I became the rapporteur and I started working in Geneva, I said, there's something intimately wrong here. The rapporteur on violence against women was not even mandated to report to CSW. So there's such an incredible fragmentation in the way we work within the UN. And I think those of us outside of the UN fall into similar patterns, unfortunately. And only in 2009, after significant advocacy, I was able to get a mandate for the Special Rapporteur to report to the CSW. So I think UN Women has to take into consideration how it can, on the one hand, allow, of course, decentralization of activities within the UN, but at the same time, conceptually, how it can integrate so that these different spheres of activities, so that we're not working in isolation.